Chief A.B. Thomas, thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for having me.
Okay, let's quickly get this conversation on course. Yesterday on the international scene, Bashar Al-Assad fled Syria. We hear now is domiciled in Russia. But this is, the result of a brutal war that has been on with several cities destroyed, Aleppo, just name them, all in ruins. And he came, at the time he came after his father died, he came with a lot of promises, a lot of potentials for prosperity, for progress of the country, but he's left the country in ruins. So the question is, what next for Syria with the exit of Bashar al-Assad? And what are the circumstances you think may have led to this final surrender by Bashar al-Assad and his government?
Well, a few factors led to the sudden collapse of Bashar al-Assad's army. Firstly, Russia was the main backer of Bashar al-Assad. Remember when this uprising started in 2011? Russia had to even there was a political agreement to allow Russia to have a naval base in Latakia, in the eastern part, the only seaport that Syria had. So Russia had everything for them, bombing, and even encouraging Iran to also send troops to come in aid of Bashar al-Assad. So while Iran was there helping Bashar al-Assad, and Russia was having their fighter bombers, Hezbollah in Lebanon, in the south, were able to also bring in troops, while Iran was also supplying weapons. But right now, what we've just seen is that Hezbollah, that has been supplying the infantry soldiers that were helping Bashar al-Assad, were involved in Israeli war, and they've been heavily battered in their border between them and Israel, in the southern part of Syria. The same thing, Russia, that has been helping with so much war. Russia is currently involved in a very serious war with Ukraine. So Russia is now even thinking of how to survive in the war with Ukraine, where almost all European countries are supporting Ukraine. So Russia had little to spare in Syria. Iran, too, most of their air defense systems have been destroyed by Israel. So Iran, too, had little to give to Syria. Fourthly, the refusal of Bashar al-Assad to negotiate with his own people, who are now the agglomeration of opposition parties, also helped. So when those people, the opposition parties, now found that Russia was busy with Ukraine, Hezbollah were on the run in the southern part of Lebanon, and did not have enough time for Syria. The Syrian troops were not well trained. And finally, they discovered that this would be the best time, because all these years, since 2011, when Russia, Hezbollah, Iran helped to push away the opposition parties back beyond Aleppo into Idlib province, they remained there quietly and started training, acquiring weapons. And when they found that all these parties that were helping were already engaged somewhere else, they quickly made a push. And because Assad was not engaging with his people, and more importantly, as soon as that revolution started in 2011, there was world sanctions against Syria. Okay. So Syria had nothing, Assad had nothing to placate his people. And rather than going ahead to be discussing with them, bringing them together, pleading with them, he decided to toe the line. His father did. Hafez Assad did in 1982, when he carpet bombed the central region of Israel, of Syria.
Syria.
So that was why it became so easy for them to keep on pushing. Because the soldiers who were not paying salaries for more than a year did not say the reason why they should die for Bashar Al-Assad. That was why it was so easy for them.
Fantastic. There are stories making the round about some of the atrocities of Bashar al-Assad while this war lasted. Stories about destructions of properties, destruction of livelihoods, destruction of human beings, even going to the extent of using chemical weapons against his own people. Should this interest the International Criminal Court, as it were?
Definitely. Excuse me, definitely. And that is why he chose Russia. That is why he chose Russia to go into exile. Because if he had come to Nigeria, he would have been arrested. If he had gone to England, he would have been arrested. If he had gone to France, he would have been arrested to face the ICJ at The Hague. So he knew that Putin himself is also wanted. And Putin of Russia chooses where he goes to. He hardly travels. So the best place for him is to go to Russia. But definitely, the International Criminal Justice, Court of Justice, will definitely investigate him. They will want him to be tried. The Syrians themselves will want him to be tried. And you can imagine him putting prisoners about a mile underground. And when they were all coming out yesterday, some of them could not even run. They couldn't even run. They were being pulled because they couldn't believe it. Some of them have been dead since 2011 without trial. So definitely, I believe his atrocities all over the years, particularly the use of chemical weapons against his own defenseless civilians, calls for criminal investigation.
What do you make of the conversations around the fact that this Syrian war broke out as a result of the quest for democratic governance in Syria? You remember his father was there when the father passed on. I mean, he was brought in to take over from the father. That looks like a hereditary, monarchical kind of government. But we know that the moment there were agitations for democratization of governance in Syria, that's when all of these started. And Assad wasn't willing to listen to his people. And now the people turned against him. Even within the rank and file of the army, you had a lot of deserters. And then you had a lot of them who were now working with other militant groups, bringing us to where we are today. What do you make of this issue of the government system, democratic system, which seems to be a major problem globally, particularly with the Western world?
You find that, unfortunately, the Western world have created their own system whereby the people have to decide who rules them. But in Syria, Hafez Assad, the father of this just outgone president, was in power after a military coup that overthrew the king. So right from the time the father of this Assad left up till 2 days ago, the Assad family had ruled Syria for 54 years. What can be worse than that? You have ruled your people, you and your family, your father to son. You have ruled your people for more than half a century, 54 years. So the people are bound to revolt. They see what happens in other countries. You can imagine by yesterday morning, there was a heavy hold-up between Jordan and Syria. Many Syrians who have been in Jordan for so many years, trying to come back home when the home is not even settled yet, just because they heard that Assad has gone to Moscow. Those in Dera, in the southern part, so close to Lebanon, even revolted. They were the first to enter Damascus. It only shows that people are seeing what happens in other countries. Near you here, Ghana had an election yesterday.
On Saturday.
On Saturday. And before the voting was counted, the other man said,
I concede defeat.
I concede defeat. But this is a country called Syria, where if you just make any noise about the government, you'll be taken from the street. It was a police state. A state where I was laughing last year when Assad went into a market. I was playing with people in the market, pricing things. I said, he doesn't know anything. Because inside Damascus, everybody was afraid. So nobody will even go near him. But now that they have seen that all his backers are faced in one problem or the other, they felt it was time to push. And the soldiers who have not been paid for over a year, who are ill-trained, ill-equipped, you could see the kind of helicopter gunships that were left around. All the people, all these Air Force men, they did was to simply remove the better parts of the Air Force helicopter, just put them on the ground, hoping that it would take the opposition parties a long time to fix them, to allow them to run as far as they can avoid running. I mean, they run and they change into civilian uniform.
Okay.
So what we are saying is that democracy, the worst democracy, is still better than any military government. Assad's father was like, I was a retired army officer. Assad was still behaving. The younger son, who just left, was still behaving like a soldier, a dictator. When a dictator is there, he does not have time for negotiation. And democracy is all about negotiation, voting, and letting the voice of the people to be the deciding factor. But in a dictatorship, it is the rule of one man, by one man, for one man. His wife, the British woman, she left on Friday for Moscow with her 3 children and in-laws. It only shows that when the tree breaks, the birds are gone.
Absolutely.
So that is what the wife did on Friday. And he was still hoping that something will happen. Happen from where? Is it Turkey to the northeast? Is it Iraq to the north? Is it Israel to the east of Syria? Is it Lebanon to the south? All of them are in war. Israel has already seized the buffer zone between Israel and Syria. And their reason is, we signed this agreement in 1984 that there should be a buffer zone between the Golan Heights that Israel seized from Syria. So if you don't want us to finish you, there should be a buffer zone. Don't come near. There was a buffer zone between Israel and Lebanon, but Hezbollah breached it. And that led to the massive destruction of southern Lebanon. So Hezbollah had no interest in going to save Hafiz Assad.
Yeah.
Then if you talk of Turkey, Turkey is not interested, because Hafiz Assad all along has been assisting the Kurdish in the northeast of Syria to be fighting for independence in Turkey. So Turkey was not interested in helping. Okay. Then suddenly on Friday, Iran, Russia, and Syrian foreign ministers ran to Iraq in the north, seeking a solution to the problem. Iraq said, look, we have not recovered from America's invasion. So we are just interested in not allowing a spillover into our territory. Of course, you can't go to Turkey, because Turkish government knows that they need a survival in the Turkish-speaking area of Syria. So is it Lebanon you go to? Definitely not. Then you also the also have not been paid. No new weapons, nothing. The sanctions was biting heavily, just as sanctions is biting on Syria, on Russia now. That is why Russia is now looking up to North Korea and that pariah state. So it was the best time to push. They knew he was open And within 10 days, they captured over 12 cities in 10 days.
With little or no resistance.
No resistance.
Okay. Let's look at now that Bashar al-Assad is out of the way. What becomes of Syria? Don't forget that in a war situation like this, you always have various interests, various militant groups, rebel groups, at the later part converging, working together for the final onslaught against Bashar al-Assad, which has paid off. One man that has been very prominent in this conversation is one Abu Muhammad Jolani, who is being touted to be the new face of the new government that ousted Bashar al-Assad. But we know that with this kind of, various interests, that may also be another problem that may, crop up like we saw in Sudan. With Omar al-Bashir out of the way, Sudan is still, is yet to recover from a brutal civil war which erupted after the exit of Omar al-Bashir. So let's get your take along this line.
Yes. I personally feel that if Jalani does not handle the situation well, he is being propped up right now. Yesterday he spoke in Damascus, and the reason why people are respecting him right now is that he's the leader of the largest opposition group.
Okay, let me just pause you there. We'll take a short break. It's still TMI on the ITV network. Our focus on the show is the rise and fall of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian strongman who has since gone to seek asylum in Russia after 10 days of serious onslaught by a combination, you can call it a conglomeration of rebel groups in that country. We'll be back to talk more in a moment. Stay tuned.
TMI, every opinion counts.
Many thanks again for joining us on the program TMI on the ITV network. Our guest in the studio, A.B. Thomas, Esquire, giving us insights on the latest development in the Middle East with the exit of Bashar al-Assad, who has been at the helm of affairs in that country, midwifing a brutal civil war that's led to the death of hundreds of thousands of people, destruction of major cities in that country. But the major opposition rebel groups came together in the last 10 days to focus on Bashar al-Assad. He couldn't stand it anymore. Today, he's out of the country. So we were talking about what next, particularly with the fact that in a fragile situations like this, we can have various interests overriding the collective interest of the people. So what's the best option?
Well, like I was saying, Jalani spoke well yesterday in Damascus by saying the victory ousting Bashar al-Assad was a victory for all Syrians. That was an attempt to bring all opposition groups into one fold, provided he doesn't become under Bashar al-Assad, because power intoxicates.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So he has to ensure that all the opposition groups are all invited to form a government. Luckily for him, he has a seasoned Prime Minister of Israel, of Syria, who has spoken a day earlier by saying, I am here, I'm not going anywhere, I'm a Syrian, I'm ready to help the incoming group to create a stable Syria. That shows you that if they can tap from the experience of that Prime Minister, they can have a stable Syria by engaging every opposition group and avoiding international interference. Like you were saying, Turkey has interest. Because in northern Kurdistan, the northern part of Syria, they speak Kurdish. The PKK is in alliance with the eastern part of Turkey that also speak Kurdish. And they have been fighting for over 50 years for an independent Kurdistan country. So it is a delicate issue, but they must ensure that the PKK does not use northern Syria to launch attack into Turkey. In that case, Turkey will have no reason to destabilize the new Syria. To the east of Syria, they have the warmongers, the Israelis. Bashar al-Assad avoided going into Golan Heights, which territory actually belongs to Syria. If the new regime does not attempt to say, oh, we are good, we can go in, then Israel will have no reason to attack them. Meanwhile, the bridges linking Syria with southern Lebanon, Israel bombed the place yesterday morning, destroying those bridges yesterday morning, Sunday.
Okay.
Israel's reason was that, oh, we are very happy. This is where Hezbollah has been supplied weapons by Iran, using Syria as a conduit pipe to supply weapons to Hezbollah. So Israel is interested. The Lebanese army that has now taken over the areas Hezbollah used to occupy in southern Lebanon are also interested in what is happening in Syria. Because any negative thing that takes place in Syria will bring, because today 33% of those in Lebanon are of Syrian descent. And they don't want that to continue. Then if you now look northeast of Syria, you have those being supported by America. Deir az-Zor have been captured by those Americans who supply weapons in northeast of Syria. So America also have interest. Their interest is that, oh, Deir az-Zor has been the headquarters of ISIS. We don't want ISIS to come back. Then if you now look straight to the north of Syria, where they have a very long border with Iraq, Iraq is also interested. We don't want a spillover of this crisis to come over into Iraq, where we are still trying to build a nation. So if these international interferences do not come in, and if Jelani is able to manage the different opposition groups, tapping from the experience of the Prime Minister, who has been an administrator and a politician, because these opposition parties, who came in, are mere soldiers. They have no administrative acumen. So if they can just say, look, I saw them yesterday when they went to bring out the Prime Minister, and they surrounded him with guns, but they were not hostile to him. So if they can just guide him and let him also guide them, they are likely to have stability at least for some time, without Jelani behaving as an emperor to the other opposing sides that they fought together.
What does this mean for the much talked about peace in the Middle East?
Well, it's unfortunate this has happened. This has happened, and America, Biden spoke yesterday, and Biden's speech, if you are somebody who has been following international affairs, he is deeply happy because it is creating more vassal states for Israel. There was a time Syria was a very powerful country, second best to Egypt.
In the Middle East.
In the Middle East. Now Syria is in tatters. The only power, Iran can't even fight Israel now. So the only power in the whole Middle East is Israel. So America will be very happy to keep it at that level. And Donald Trump spoke yesterday. And what did he say? He said America should remove their troops in the northeast of Syria, that it doesn't want to beat American troops there. He doesn't want to know what is happening in Syria.
Okay.
But the real reason why he wants to do that is that he knows that with a well-equipped Israel, Israel can finish all the vassal states like Jordan, Syria. The only country Israel will not attempt is Turkey. So with a country like Syria in problem, with Egypt that depends financially on America, with Lebanon that is seeking America's help, Iraq that still has bases of American bases inside Iraq. So the entire area is surrounded by vassal states that cannot point a finger at Israel. So the aim is that Syria, if you're able to solve your problems, very good. If you can't solve your problems, very good.
Interesting developments from Syria, but we're set now to join our Lagos Network studio where we'll have more conversations on some global issues. But just before that, let's get a final word from Chief A.B. Thomas, our Global Affairs Analyst, today on this Syrian developing story where Bashar Al-Assad has since taken refuge in Russia, seeking asylum there with his family. Apparently, he knows what will befall him if he decides to stay back. But there's this twist to this conversation that I heard the Syrian Prime Minister saying that, you know, the rebel group should come, let's have a peaceful transition, let's have a discussion, let's have a conversation so we can have a peaceful transition. Isn't that a soft landing for these rebel groups to ease their ascension to power, as it were?
For me, I won't call it an easy landing. Rather, it is easy landing for the Prime Minister himself, who served under Bashar Al-Assad.
Okay.
He knows much about Bashar Al-Assad. He knows where the chemical weapons are. He knows where the biological weapons are. The people are in power already. But like I said earlier, the opposition groups can tap from the experience of the Prime Minister,
Okay.
who has been a bureaucrat under Bashar al-Assad. So they should take the invitation of the Prime Minister seriously.
Okay.
So that the Prime Minister can talk to those in the East, those in the North, those in the South, those in the West. Already, the opposition group have had a memorandum of understanding with Russia.
Okay.
That they will not touch the Russian
Interest.
airbase, Russian seaport with the ships. They will touch Russian interest. Good. If you can come to understanding with the various groups, with whom you fought to liberate Syria, all will be good and fine.
Okay. So it's a wait and see game.
It's a wait and see game.
So let's see how it plays out. Chief A.B. Thomas, many thanks for coming on the show. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's the TMI on the ITV network.